Welcome back, everybody, to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. It is hump day with Hotmeyer. She is back better than ever. Rachel Hotmeyer, how the heck are you doing? How have you been? What's up? What's new? Tell us everything.
It was a pretty balmy day in Green Bay today. We hit like 42, which is just shocking, even though I know we're going to be opposite shocked back into the cold by the end of the week. So it was exciting to feel a little warmth. The sun is staying out for like 10 minutes later a day. So we're getting there. It seems like seasonally Mother Nature understands that people are depressed here. So it's a great day in Green Bay.
It is insane how warm 40 degrees or either like high 30s can feel when you are previously used to negative 16-degree weather.
Oh, yeah. Like I don't even need a jacket.
Yeah, it was insane. Like, I mean, imagine going from like negative 16 to 40. It's a 56-degree difference.
God.
Like, can you imagine? Like, that's the difference between like 30 and 86. Like, that is an insane difference.
That is crazy. And to me, like under 20 degrees here, the wind is just typically unbearable. And again, I say this, that's the difference. My family back home dealt with the nor'easter this weekend, 2+ feet of snow dumped on them. But here, it's not the snow that makes winter tough. It's the wind chill. I could wear just my regular winter jacket with the shirt underneath it, and that's not enough. You need a scarf and a hat and gloves. My hands hurt and crack all the time out here. So to feel like it's above 20, let alone 42, I mean, it feels like spring.
It does. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And you never really quite get used to it. But yeah, people always say like the snow days are usually, as long as it's not super windy, the snow days are usually fine. If it's like, I don't know, 28, 30 degrees, it's snow falling down. It's great as long as it's not windy, but those wind days where the wind chill is brutal, forget about it. Yeah. Anyway, moving on to sports stuff. Speaking of nor'easter, a former nor'easter quarterback officially calls it quits. Tom Brady, who did not mention former nor'easter team, the New England Patriots, at all in his retirement spiel on the notes. Maybe the most shocking thing of this is that Brady went notes app on this and didn't have like a big like production video and the new t-shirt that came out announcing his retirement of like Tom Brady forever or something. Like that was the most surprising thing of this, but we'll get into all of that. But I just want to get your 1,000-foot view of the Tom Brady official retirement.
To be fair, it wasn't Notes app. It was a graphic, even though it looks like the Notes app, but it was a graphic.
Got it.
Yeah, I do think you could have, fit more information in there. We didn't need the whole slideshow. That's not like that's doing that much for your engagement. It is interesting though, right? He's an athlete that is known for employing an impressive video production team. I have to wonder how the reporting over the weekend has impacted the planned announcement. Maybe this was supposed to be announced in the last episode of Man in the Arena. Maybe it was going to be a Super Bowl announcement. There are so many things that this could have been, and we'll never know what it was supposed to be before early reports broke. And that's a shame sometimes. Just like, whatever he eventually does to honor Patriots fans, we'll never know if that was planned or if that was just a PR reaction to the outcry that so many Patriots fans have had for not being recognized. A lot of Patriots fans in my age, I believe, feel very strongly that he's going to do something to honor them, retire a Patriot, something like that. I've seen very small mumblings of that, but nothing that I trust right now. My parents and Patriots fans older are really enraged. I've seen a lot of outcry. The phone lines for Felger and Maz on 98.5 in Boston today were hours long. People are really pissed.
It is really odd that he went that route and didn't mention it at all. I can only imagine that divorce was much more harsh than at least I even imagined it to be. I knew that there was probably some hard feelings there. The Patriots did post about the retirement, but yeah, that it had to have fallen hard. It would be beyond shocking to me if he didn't retire a New England Patriot. Like that would be beyond shocking to me if he didn't. But crazier things have happened. Again, everything on his retirement post was Buccaneers related, which is the freshest, but it's still interesting nonetheless.
Right.
But
you're still retiring from your whole career. You still went 20 years to get to Tampa.
Absolutely. So it seems odd in that regards. I want to talk because to me, I think greatest of all time, certainly the most successful of all time. I think greatest of all time, excuse me. But I want to, I just want to talk about what he means to the game, because to me, whether you loved him and were a huge Tom Brady fan, whether you hated him and he was the heel that you constantly cheered against, or whether you just kind of stood by idly and just respected the greatness that was sort of taking place during that time period, Tom Brady being gone from the NFL is a loss. Now, I know that there are a litany of really young, talented, up and coming quarterbacks. The NFL is in great hands. It's not like all of a sudden the NFL is going to be like, well, Brady's gone, and now we're going to go into this, like, once Jordan retired, where the NBA took a dip. I don't think that's going to happen in the NFL, but the NFL feels weird and different without Tom Brady in it. And to me, it's not as good of an NFL because, like I said, either you loved him, you hated him, respected him. There was just that you wanted to watch him play for one of those three reasons.
Yeah. And I think ultimately the game is so different today than it was when Brady even started in the National Football League, let alone played for Michigan. I don't consciously know professional football without Tom Brady in it. Was I alive? Did I experience years of it? Of course. There is like a baby pink Eli Manning jersey somewhere in the archives of my parents' house because they're from Jersey. So I was aware of it, or at least I participated in it, but I certainly wasn't conscious for it. And, watching Brady play young quarterbacks today, challenge the older quarterbacks back then, he has absolutely been a dynamic force of this game. And I think Brady also offers something for everyone, the pushing the limits, defying boundaries, I think attracted everybody, but he also was, in a sense, he's obviously not mobile like Lamar Jackson or even Aaron Rodgers extent. His talents on the field offered something a bit for every type of NFL fan and what you wanted to see in a quarterback, be it old fashioned or modern. So I think he has a huge impact on this game. People want 12 for numerous reasons, but certainly in my generations, a lot of athletes pick 12 because of Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers.
Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, this is a Packers podcast. So of course, a couple of things. This affects the Packers in a variety, right? No, but this affects the Packers in a variety of different ways, right? One, this makes the NFC ridiculously easier in some capacity, right? Like that is a team that if Brady's back, they're competing again for a Super Bowl. It just is what it is. Brady equals the opportunity and a chance, a puncher's chance, no matter what, at a Super Bowl. That's one less contending team. The Buccaneers, in my opinion, I don't care what they do this offseason, they will not recover. They will not be a contending team in the NFC next year. How that affects Aaron Rodgers' decision, and maybe more importantly, Green Bay's decision as to say, hey, the Buccaneers are now down. We just watched an NFC championship game with the 49ers and Rams that, to be fair, wasn't ultra impressive. You feel like maybe you can beat both of those teams. Like you look around the rest of the NFC, all right, Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, okay, they have their own issues. Maybe the Seahawks can put something together again with Russell Wilson, but they were a nightmare team this past season. There's always going to be a team that comes up and plays well out of nowhere. The North looks terrible. I don't care who they get as head coaches. It doesn't look like a great division. The Green Bay has to feel like, hey, we run this back one more time. We've got as good of a stake at this as anybody in the NFC to go back to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, the disappearance of Tom Brady is huge in terms of the Packers' next steps because it impacts them in two ways. Same tree branch, but maybe some different offshoots. One, this ultimately impacts quarterback moves in the offseason. It was likely that Jimmy Garoppolo wouldn't be returning to the 49ers. He's at 4-1 odds, was the last I saw, to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers starting quarterback for week 1, 2022. Rodgers was 4th or 5th on that list. So not extremely likely, but again, what does Vegas know is what I like to say. So it ultimately opens up another spot for quarterbacks to move. But again, and I said this when we looked at this postseason, I was confident that the Packers of 2021 season could beat the Bucs and Rams as they were, but I was nervous about the 49ers. When you move Garoppolo out of that situation and you don't put Brady anywhere else, this just opens up so many options for them. And it does allow them to confidently say, okay, if teams really stay the same, how many more splash signings can there be? Maybe this is the opportunity to run it back, because I don't think with this signing, it's really the same NFC situation.
I agree. And I think no matter what happens, there's going to be a lot of shakeup. There's going to be a lot of this offseason has the ability to be one of the, we thought the last couple off seasons were crazy. This one has the ability to be that all over again. Tom Brady's already retired. Ben Roethlisberger's already retired. We've got some major drama with Brian Flores that we might get to in a moment. And that's not even like free agency trades, like all of it is going to be Aaron. We don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers, which again, speaking of which, another just smooth transition here, Rachel. I've seen it proposed, and I think it was Florio of all people that initially said this, but I've seen other people float it out there as well. Do you believe that Tom Brady retiring directly affects Aaron Rodgers in the fact that he wouldn't want to retire in the same season, knowing that they would have to share a Hall of Fame podium in 5 seasons, and Brady becomes the headliner in that situation.
Yeah, I guess this just kicks Roethlisberger off the stage at that rate.
Exactly.
Which is crazy. Because these athletes have worked so hard their whole lives. They deserve the stage, but also in reality, Roethlisberger pales in comparison to Brady and Rodgers together in star power. I mean, that's a supernova right there.
Right.
So I think ultimately, I don't want to say it impacts his like true personal decision, because both Brady and Rodgers kind of had that same mindset of, when the game isn't at 100% for me, or there are other priorities, that's when I need to step away. And Brady's made that decision to, take on fatherhood more, all sorts of things. Is it time for Rodgers? I don't know. Is he actually going to be motivated by that? I would be not shocked, but like a little surprised if it truly came down to that, especially if that reasoning became public. I think athletes at this sort of level, when you reach Brady and Rodgers' greatness, you have to carry yourself with a bit of ego. You don't get there without that type of extreme confidence and ego. And maybe that is a motivating factor, is I care about my legacy to that point. I care about my gold jacket ceremony so much. Davante Adams acknowledges he thinks about the gold jacket, as he should.
Absolutely.
But are we thinking of that standpoint where my entire ceremony is going to be usurped by another GOAT next to me? I don't know if men take it that seriously.
I don't know. It's tough to say. To me, I think the fact that Brady retires and that there's now maybe even an easier path in the NFC affects his decision more than I don't want to retire in the same year of Brady.
Right.
Ultimately, I would have bet heavily that Aaron Rodgers was not retiring this offseason in either situation, whether Brady was back, whether Brady was gone. No matter what, like the fact that he met with the Packers for additional time in the offseason, I think this is a decision between, does he want to stay in Green Bay or does he want to try to go somewhere else? I do not think that this is a situation where he's going to retire. Nothing would shock me anymore. Everything, as he said, is still on the table, but I just never saw retirement as a true option this offseason. I don't know if you feel differently.
I just think people are weighing too heavily on this news that Rodgers stuck around for a couple of days. He did that last year. So it's not that shocking. You've got things to clean up and there's still business to be done, especially when you talk about players like Rodgers, like Davante Adams, who don't like to hold contract talks in season. So there can still be conversations to wrap up that aren't finalized, but okay, you can get some coffee, go sit at 1265 and at least restart the conversation without it being over the phone or flying to California. So I just, that aspect of it to me doesn't change the situation at all, does not move the needle to me. It's more of the surrounding situations. He doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild. Are the Packers willing to say, we appreciate that, but we've got to go balls to the wall with this type of rebuild and blow it up so we can get jump started faster? Or are they clinging to life here?
And it's interesting too. I think one of the things that maybe could even help bridge that entire situation, and we'll get to this more in just a second, but Green Bay has a quarterback coach opening. I would think very much that the Packers are going to call Aaron Rodgers and say, hey, anybody you think you have in mind that, you would like in this position? And I think that's just another olive branch to sort of transition out. This has got to be a hire that ultimately helps Jordan Love a lot too. Like they have a lot invested in that. So it can't just be Aaron Rodgers, but the fact that he wants to be involved in conversations. He's been very clear about that. This is an opportunity for the Packers to talk to Rodgers and say, hey, I know you want to be involved in these conversations. We have an opening to be your quarterback's coach. Are you leaning towards coming back? If so, we'd love to have you involved in that decision. And he might say, yeah, I'm sort of leaning that way and I'd love to be involved in that. That might be a little bit of a bridge there in a weird sort of way.
So my thing is, here's a question for you. I think this is an automatic no if there's a trade or playing for another team in some sense on the table. But let's say Rodgers does decide to retire outright.
Okay.
One, do you think the Packers would ask for his help in that hire? And two, do you think he would say, yes, I'd love to help you, even though I'm piecing out?
If he was retiring, I think he would appreciate the question. And I think he'd give them advice in that situation. I don't think they would take it as seriously if he was piecing out. I think they would, I don't know that they would reach out to him in that situation.
Right.
If they did, I think he would still give them an honest answer and be like, here's some guys that I think could help and help Jordan. I think he would legitimately do that. But I think in that situation, Green Bay probably just goes in whatever direction they want to go in. Whereas if Rodgers says like, hey, this coach I've had a connection with and they're available, or I know this person who said something great about this person, I'd love, or maybe just like, hey, I don't have any names in mind, but if you're thinking of interviewing guys, let me know. And maybe I can Zoom interview with these guys really quick and just kind of see what they're about to at least give you my input on the discussion. But I think if he's piecing out, I think in that scenario, Green Bay probably just kind of takes that decision on their own.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's an interesting question.
What do you think?
No, I think if Rodgers is retiring, I think this is the opportunity, as cold as it is for everybody, to just cut clean ties. And even though it would probably look nice and feel nice for everybody involved to at least have him in as an advisor, I don't know that either side is interested in that if he's not playing.
No, I agree. I totally agree with that. And if he does, I think if he does retire, I don't think that this is going to be a severance of like, man, these two sides just fell apart. And that I would be a little bit surprised at that. I think he will still be involved in like, he would almost assuredly redo his contract in some capacity to free up space so that, he would get more money up front and it would help the Packers and so on and so forth. So I think there'd be some things that he did there to still help Green Bay. And again, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe I'm naive, but I think there would still be a connection there. And I don't think if he decided to walk away right now, I don't think it would be via animosity. I think it would be more towards, it's just time to hang him up.
Yeah. And I think, he's referenced a couple times now that his relationship with Gutekunst has improved this year, the communication, and he feels like a more valued member at the table. I don't think it'd be hanging it up 100%, but I also don't think it'd be out of complete animosity. I think it would have to be a kind of reconciling with he doesn't want to be a part of the Packers' future, and that might be pushing him towards hanging it up. He could be someone that still has it in him in the fighting spirit to play, but maybe it's not there physically or mentally even. Those are all encompassing parts of going forward 100% in the game.
I think sometimes it gets overblown when somebody digs themselves in a hole and then we celebrate themselves getting out of said hole because they dug it themselves in the first place. So I can understand that maybe some people are just saying like, maybe Brian Gutekunst doesn't deserve credit because he was the one who kind of via lack of communication, or maybe via drafting Jordan Love and not communicating that better. Maybe he dug the hole in the first place. Personally, though, in this situation, I lean towards if the rumors were true, which at least I don't know. I haven't seen anything completely 100% to say so, but if the rumors were true that at some point Rodgers even thought about wanting Gutekunst fired or things like that, for Brian to not only swallow his ego in that situation, not only B, to admit that they made mistakes throughout the process, not only C, not have a gut reaction of like, screw this guy, we'll trade him and get a ton of picks and I'll build this team in my own darn image. And then D, to probably go out of his way and extend olive branches to remake that connection and get it to the point where Aaron Rodgers is calling that a friendship by the end of the year. That to me is insane. It is so well done by Brian Gutekunst in all areas. And like I said, I think he deserves some blame for maybe digging some of that hole in the first place, but how he responded to that. And to me, sometimes responding to your mistakes is way bigger than the mistakes that you made in the first place. He responded in a big way.
And I think I've said this on the show before. I don't think people give Mike McCarthy enough credit for this. The interpersonal communication skills he had to balance the personalities and really be the intermediary between Rodgers and the front office, because he did that a lot. Yep. And for him to keep a lot of this tension and bubbling personalities and growing situations under wraps, out of the public eye, and at least handled well enough to perform for so long is seriously underrated by Packers fans. And you can not like his calls all you want, but that is a huge part of being a coach, is the interpersonal skills, is really being that middleman between the front office and the players. And it's not like that at every team. Structures can range, but that is what it was like with the Packers. And Mike McCarthy had a huge role to play in that. LaFleur's friendships are different. He is relatively close with Rodgers, and I don't think he's been as vocal of an intermediary between the front office and Rodgers. I think he's largely kind of kept out of it and let them make decisions and just focused on being the football coach and the friend. So that changes the dynamic immensely, and it kind of made Gutekunst and Rodgers look eye to eye and figure out their issues and communicate.
That's a great point. And this is a slight tangent here, but it's why whenever I hear people say like Phil Jackson was only a good coach because he had Jordan and Pippen and Shaq.
We're making more Last Dance references?
No, I know. But like he had Jordan and Pippen and Shaq and Kobe. So that's like the only reason he's a Hall of Fame coach is because he's had arguably 4 of the greatest players. How many times, look at all the sports, how many times that you point to the team with the best lineup every year, can you say that's the team? We are at Bengals Rams this year. The team that has the best talent rarely actually ends up going on and winning the championship. There have been dream teams after dream teams that fall short and fall short and fall short.
Yep.
To me, there is an absolute skill in managing those egos because Jordan and Pippen and Rodman and that whole group had egos.
All had huge egos.
And Kobe and Shaq couldn't even get along to manage that and make sure that that team was successful. There is a mastery in getting the most out of the pieces that you have. And that is coaching. It is not just, well, if he didn't take a bad team and bring him to the championship, how can he be good? No, sometimes it is harder to manage the egos and keep those things together than it is just, a coach like, the Bengals and put it like, it's a difficult job. And he did it at a very high level for forever. That is a random tangent.
But I mean, even on that note, as we're talking about Brady before, you could see how a delicate ego situation like that falls apart and involved parties are less and less interested in maintaining that balance. That's probably why he decided to start his own chapter where he could reframe his own ego in Tampa and have a completely different locker room role with a coach that was much more willing to respond to his ego instead of Belichick and Kraft and Brady all keeping things in place because they formed it together like a cohesive ego.
We're just wrapping everything up so cohesively here today. And I love the fact too, because to me, Brady won out on that big because there was always the question, well, is it Belichick or is it Brady? Is it the great coach or is it the great QB? Well, so far, Belichick hasn't done a ton sans QB1. Tom Brady, pretty darn good in his 2 seasons after leaving Belichick. So it certainly still helped his career as he moved to Tampa and now again is retired.
It's not like he's down and out. Like it's not like he was Cliff Kingsbury this year.
No,
he did stuff with Mac Jones.
Belichick is doing just fine. Don't get me wrong. He's going to be just fine. But if you had to say like which 2 is that, I think Brady wins the tip, or at least I think you have to at least take away the fact of like anyone who thought like Brady was just successful because of Belichick and the system and things like that's done now. That's
agree.
Done. All right, let's go from Bill Belichick to Phil Jackson to Mo Drayton. I think,
and then I'm going to take it back real quick. You'll see my transition.
Okay, perfect. Well, I don't even know where we're going to go from here, but of course, Mo Drayton officially, well, not officially yet, but Tom Silverstein reported first, and then Rob Domofsky had it, amongst others, that Mo Drayton will not be retained as head coach, which of course means that he has been fired because, or I guess he could have resigned, but likely fired because he was set under contract still. Again, disappointing that Mo wasn't able to be more successful. I think he brought a lot of character, a lot of vision, and a lot of energy to that team. As we talked about on numerous occasions, this issue for Green Bay special teams is far more than just a special teams coordinator. And I don't care how much money that they throw at the next special teams coordinator. And if they get the best special teams coordinator in the league, that in and of itself is not going to fix the issue in Green Bay special teams. It might help a lot, but it's not going to fix it entirely. Thoughts on Mo Drayton?
It's a shame. He was a great guy, but again, the point remains that this special teams issue went far beyond Mo Drayton's name and Mo Drayton's presence. This is a lack of resources, a lack of starters committed to him. And I believe that falls under Matt LaFleur. Special teams is a systemic issue here that has to get way more attention. I'm interested in whatever LaFleur finds in his studies around the league this offseason. And I know some great people putting some great research into that. But to me, you've got Mo Drayton now and you have Joe Judge on the market. They should be throwing their money at him if they really care about fixing this issue. To me, that is a point blank hire.
Yeah, no, he would be a phenomenal hire. Joe Judge is currently out there. Rich Bisaccia is also out there, the Raiders head coach or interim head coach from this last year, who did a really nice job. And apparently a lot of Raiders players are very upset that they did not retain him as head coach. He is still getting head coaching interviews, as is, I think, Joe Judge. I think both of those guys have still been getting head coaching interviews. So I don't think that Bisaccia is going to end up with a head coaching job. Joe Judge certainly still could maybe, but there's definitely some different ways that this could still go. And I'm really intrigued to see in what direction it does go, because they need some new ideas. And like you said, though, this is not just a special, I equate it to this, right? The Green Bay Packers have an awful special teams restaurant. They have awful ingredients. They have awful feng shui. They have awful seating. They have awful art. They have awful everything up.
Bad ambiance all around.
Over the last couple of seasons, Green Bay had all these awful ingredients, everything. And they said, all we're going to do is change chefs. And that's all we're going to do is we're just going to bring in a new chef. We're still going to keep the same awful ingredients, the same awful building, the same feng shui, the same awful art. Everything is still going to stay awful, but we're going to bring in a new chef. And maybe that chef's got a couple different ideas of what to do with the menu, but ultimately your ingredients still suck. And if you don't fix that, your restaurant is still going to suck. They need to fix the entirety of the special teams from the foundation up. And that can't just be a new chef.
And in reality, that restaurant is owned by a very well-established ownership group that owns the nicest restaurant in town with a heck of a menu, with incredible 5-star Michelin dishes that just aren't willing to share resources.
Yeah, it's almost like the Packers are like, offense is the casino, the defense is the hotel, and then the special teams is like the just garbage restaurant that can't find anything good going for it. So
I hope it's a nice casino.
They got, yes, right. They got air conditioning and, they got all the nice things.
Okay.
Anywho, so we talked about Rich Bisaccia, Joe Judge. I mentioned as well on Twitter, like one day, I don't think this is going to happen, but it could cause a ripple effect. But we know that Jim Harbaugh may be out in Michigan. Jay Harbaugh
beats Ohio State once and says, let's go back to the NFL.
Right. Jay Harbaugh is, I believe, his son and is the special teams coordinator for Michigan. If all of a sudden they end up changing things a lot in Michigan, Jay Harbaugh, now I would expect Jay Harbaugh to go with Jim to Minnesota in some capacity. He's been a running backs coach, a tight ends coach, and a special teams coach. But if he, for some reason he doesn't, or he just wants to go in his own direction, he led one of the best special teams in all of college football at Michigan this past season, has been doing it for a while now. Or what I think maybe could be more likely is Jim brings him along as the special teams coordinator in Minnesota, and Minnesota's special teams coordinator currently, Ryan Ficken, who has done a pretty good job with that unit in Minnesota, could potentially become an option in Green Bay. So we could see some dominoes at play here, but ultimately Green Bay is going to end up with a new special teams coordinator in some capacity.
Yeah, the Harbaugh effect in the NFC North, or even just general Northwestern Big Ten football, could be very interesting.
Well, let's talk about that, because it is rumored that Jim Harbaugh is going to be the head coach in Minnesota. They have not finished his second interview yet and are still going through the process, but there have been reports out there that Harbaugh is going to accept the job in Minnesota. We will see. That could easily come in the next couple of days here. But your thoughts on Jim Harbaugh potentially being a coach in the NFC North?
Listen, I mean, there are some coaches with such storied histories that go back and forth, whether it's up and down position ladders, between leagues, between NCAA and NFL. It's interesting. I'd be really curious to see how much he shares in his introductory press conference. Like, what's motivating him to do this now? You just checked off a huge Michigan, what I would assume is a bucket list item. Is that it? Like, you wanted to do that and then bounce? I'm just curious as to the motivations here. But again, why wouldn't you take the interview? Who gets, this? And this is for everybody's career advice from Rachel. You get offered an interview in any path, you don't not take it. You should always take an interview from recruiter Andy. It's always good advice to take an interview and chat about potential opportunities. So it is interesting that this is starting to steamroll into a reality.
You can almost taste the Jim Harbaugh, Kirk Cousins marriage at head coach quarterback is just going to be, it's going to be pure joy, I think. Yeah. Let's go to Packers coaches, because there was some official announcements. Jason Vrabel sticks as wide receivers coach. I thought maybe he would have a chance to move to QB's coach, but he doesn't. Sticks as wide receivers coach, but it gains the passing game coordinator title as was expected. Luke Butkus had been reported previously, officially the new offensive line coach. And then two other ones, Connor Lewis goes to the assistant quarterbacks coach, and then Ryan Mahaffey goes to assistant offensive line coach. I'll let you go in any direction you want there, but some official Packer announcements on the coaching staff.
First and foremost, if we're going to talk about Luke Butkus, we have to talk about Dick Butkus, because if you guys don't follow him on Twitter, he is without a doubt 500% the funniest tweeter on that free website right now. I can't explain it. And just to emphasize this, we're going to pull up his tweet congratulating his nephew, Luke, from Marshfield, Wisconsin, because it is just simply iconic. I've never had any sort of affinity for the Butkus family before. And now I'm about to turn on tweet notifications for Dick Butkus because it's just hysterical. Yesterday, he tweets, all lowercase, very grandfatherly. Shout out to my nephew, Luke, the new O-line coach for the Packers. So great to see you moving up with an expansion team. I died. I cackled. I nearly peed my pants. It's just so funny. And then his next tweet is nephew Luke earning his chops as an Illinois center. And it's a picture of Luke playing. And I just like, you love when families are involved with football, and the jest is hysterical. I think it's great. Like what a story, we get to cover Cole Van Lannon coming to the Packers, and now Luke Butkus moving up in the very green and gold. So that's always fun. I also think he has the chops to do it. And to use Dick Butkus's term, he is a scary man. There are some people on the Packers that scare me. Luke Butkus is up there. That is like a man I never want to cross in my life. I don't even want to walk towards him. I want to stay as far away from him as possible. That allows me to do my job. But again, I think he is the brain for this, and he's really well liked in the locker room.
Yeah, I mentioned this the other day, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, but he does a tremendous job with the offensive line. And like, if you didn't know, if you came in blind, I don't think you would know like which one's the head offensive line coach and which one's the assistant offensive line coach. They were both heavily involved, really good coaches. And I think this is just a no-brainer for Green Bay.
Yeah.
Did you see Butkus's clap back at Zach Cruz, by the way, as well?
Oh, do share.
I don't know if you have his tweets up still. I'll see if I can find it.
I'm here.
Look at his replies, because there was like Zach Cruz. Did you find it?
I'm going to the replies. He's talking to a lot of people.
Cruz said something like Butkus is one of like the best follows on Twitter, kind of like what you were saying. And then he said something like, I'm still not following you, or something.
Thanks. Still not going to follow you.
So Zach Cruz, Packers writer, of course. So Cruz is like giving him respect. Like Butkus is one of the best, follows on Twitter, and Butkus slaps right back. Thanks. Still not following you.
Like, that is gold. I mean, I don't know what's gotten into this man, but I'm loving it.
There are two things in Bears history. Well, I guess maybe like three things in Bears history that are pretty darn good. The 85 Bears defense, Walter Payton, and Dick Butkus on Twitter. Those are the three things I can have as a Packer fan some level of respect for. 85 Bears, Walter Payton, Dick Butkus on Twitter.
Wow. I hope, that I know some incredible people that work for the Bears, and I hope someone on that content team is just thinking, how can we get Dick Butkus in to read some tweets? Or
that
how
ownership team will find a way to take Butkus off before they figure out how to use him for good. That owners, they're so dumb. They'll like the whole Olin Kruitz thing was like awful, and how they handled that. So they'll find a way to like ostracize him. Like Butkus will be coaching for the Packers before the Bears figure out how to use him wisely. But I digress. Really quick, finishing up the Packers coaching. They do have 3 current openings. We talked about special teams. Quarterback coach is an opening, and likely tight ends coach with that opening likely going because he's leaving for the Broncos as offensive coordinator. So some opening, Justin Outen, that is. So 3 potential openings for Green Bay that they will have to fill. And again, we'll be keeping an eye on, and of course, breaking it down whenever that happens. Couple really quick ones as we wrap up here. I posted on Twitter, and I just want to get your quick opinion. If you had to choose one, and this isn't a fair question, but if you had to choose one, who is ultimately to blame for the Packers not winning the Super Bowl this year? And your 3 options are the players, the coaches, or the front office / GM.
The players. I would say that's
right. That's right.
I would say the players. Now, do I think the play calling was questionable? Yes, but I also think there were certain players who made decisions in the game to not hit certain receivers that cost them a lot. And I think it's very unfair to place entire game results, just like wins and losses aren't a quarterback stat, that can be true, but players can also cost you. And it wasn't just the quarterback, obviously, you know, special teams really let them down, even if they had a solid game plan there. That has simply never been executed. And in coach speak, if you want to break down the coded language, execution, whenever they're talking about that, always comes down to the players. So whether there was some freelancing, whether there was the typical lack of communication, players did not execute on basically in every way, but defensively.
No, I agree. I think you have to lean in that direction. I think overall, when I rewatched the game plan, there's things that you would like differently, but I didn't think it was anything egregious on the coaching staff's part. I also go back to like the block punt. There's nothing scheme wise special about what the 49ers did on that block punt. You can't point to that and be like, oh man, Mo Drayton got out coached on that punt block. No, it was a pretty basic call. The Packers had the players to protect it, and the Packers players screwed it up. The same thing on the field goal attempt. There's nothing on that play. The San Francisco did a good job of executing it, but there's nothing that San Francisco did that Green Bay didn't have the ability to pick up if their guys
you shouldn't have been prepared for.
Like they've been prepared for all season long. There's nothing that I can point to overall in that game and said like, man, even the Yash, and Dennis Kelly there benching Yash and putting Turner at left tackle. Turner played fine at left tackle. And yes, Kelly struggled in that game. Part of that's just Bosa. You know what? Turner probably would have struggled at right tackle too, because it's freaking Bosa. And then
you have matchups. You're not going to beat every single matchup, but you couldn't even put up a fight in the second half.
Right. And now, Yash might struggle now at left tackle more than what Turner did because Turner played well. So I don't know. There's blame to be placed all around, but to me, I think this team was far talented enough to win the Super Bowl. I don't think there's any blame on the GM. You can talk about special teams and that they maybe didn't have the right overall ingredients in special teams. I'm willing to listen to that, but overall, this team was talented enough to win a Super Bowl. I thought the coaches did a good enough job. To me, the players didn't execute when they needed to most. Mercedes Lewis with a fumble of all people, it just wasn't their day. And I think to me, that's more on players than it is on anything else.
And to me, I'm not even willing to listen to that GM and front office didn't prepare them enough argument, because one, they did everything financially within their power to preserve the 2020 team just to get them this far, and then made some incredible scouting decisions to pick up bottom of the barrel free agents that ended up showing out, clutch gene to the max to get them as far as they did. I'm not even willing to listen to that argument, because I think Packers executives did an incredible job. That to me is still underrated, just how many moves and finagling was done to be able to preserve and persist with the team that they had, and even add more talent to it that was under-scouted. To me, ultimately, if you're rattled by Trent Williams in motion, that's on you.
I totally agree. Although, to be fair, I think anyone could be rattled by Trent Williams.
But not that bad.
No, I know. I get it. All right. Last but not least, I think it is official that we can say that the Washington football team is the Washington Commanders.
I just can't wait for the prank if this drops and it wasn't.
Would that be amazing? So for those of you listening,
put it in the...
There is a TV station in Washington that
NBC Washington, NBC.
There you go. Nice plug there. Has video of the
from the chopper, NBC4 chopper.
Ridiculous. That's video. Are they going to get in trouble too for taking video of things that they shouldn't have?
No. That's listen. This is the most DC problem in the world. You chose to build your arenas outside the no-fly zone. You have every right. If you want to change the name, Mayor Muriel Bowser was happy to welcome you back to DC, and you could have built your stadium in a sanctioned no-fly zone. I went to American University, which was right on the edge of the no-fly zone downtown. So whenever people were flying over us, it was always Marine One or something to that caliber. You could have had a football stadium built in a no-fly zone. That is unheard of around the rest of this country and any other NFL market, and you could have protected yourself from this.
So anyway, there's a mural done inside the stadium that says perfect, very clear Washington Commanders, all well done. And of course, NBC captured it on camera from the chopper. Like I said, it's clear as day. So unless the Washington team, for the first time in the history of the Washington,
I'm not going to lie, team, I'm holding out a little bit that maybe they pulled off a really good prank.
There's no chance.
I don't know.
This is the least prepared team. And there was also rumors before that it was the Commanders and just everything. I don't know. I think it's the Commanders, but you called
that. So I called the name Command was what I was going with, but Commanders, a very military generated name. Last summer, I was part of a study with The Athletic. The Washington football writer, Ben Standig, had included me, a couple other market experts. I was in DC for many years before coming here, about the name change, being close to the team, marketing, stuff like that. And I had Command, and it gained some traction for sure. There were a lot of ideas in play. Again, this was so far removed from the process, but to me, the military names were always going to be the strongest. And my final insert into the conversation was Washington Command. I thought it was going to be kind of that but plural, misnomer. And then obviously individual players would be commanders, just like Packers, stuff like that. I felt pretty strongly about that if I ever had to give an educated guess. So gold star for me. Anybody wants to deliver brownies, I'll take it. But ultimately, I don't know. I've never had this feeling about Washington football before, but I am holding out like 10% about what if, hear me out. This is where my marketing and sports business minor comes into play. What if it's a mural and they're going to like explode the wrong names? Like not that one, but this one. And that's just like a curtain to reveal the big name. It could be, and I'm just not ready to rule out that possibility yet, but I would also like to take credit if I am right. So
I would be shocked. I would be shocked that Washington actually pulled something off for the first time in the history of their franchise, but we shall see. We will know.
Excuse me, we were just celebrating Doug Williams. That man pulled it all off.
That's true. That's very true. Anywho, we'll see very soon if it is the Washington Commanders, in fact, which I'm going to go and say that it will be, but we will find out. Before we head out, I just want to give a shout out to Dan Kotnick, who just recorded his last episode for the Pack-A-Day podcast yesterday on the audio version of the podcast. If you haven't checked it out yet, make sure to do so. He's going to be spending some time with his newborn. So congratulations, Dan and family. Dan has been with us since day one and the inception of the podcast. So we have been at it for a while now. I don't even know. It's been a lot of episodes. I've lost track, but he's been incredible. He's been so reliable. Yeah, every single, he's just one of the best, and we're going to miss him on the team. He's welcome back anytime, but make sure to thank Dan. Follow him on Twitter at DK all the way. But just Dan, if you're listening, appreciate all you've done. And I'm sure our paths will cross again. And hopefully someday, maybe you will make a triumphant return. But I think the big thing is he tried to upstage Brady. Brady retired, and then right. He stepped down on Pack-A-Day, and it just kind of stole all of Brady's thunder.
Crowded stage you got going on there on the retirement party.
I know. It's going to be crazy, but appreciate you, Dan. For those listening, make sure to follow Rachel on Twitter at Rachel Hotmeyer. Correct?
Yep. Yes. Right. Yes.
Follow me at Andy Herman NFL. Rachel, anything else you're working on or want to plug on the way out?
No, it's February. I'd like to have everybody keep sending the warm weather vibes to Green Bay. It's the Olympics. I hope people are getting excited. So much coverage on NBC, but the Olympics are great. What a wonderful time to celebrate just like freak athletes to represent so many countries. I think the competition is awesome. And what better thing for Packers fans to take their mind off of than more incredible athletes to be proud of. There's a ton from Wisconsin. So that's been really cool, but also just around the world. I mean, I'm most excited for Olympic hockey. It's always my favorite. And while I'm bummed that the NHL has been difficult to say the least on that, I'm still excited to see it.
Yeah, it's always fun. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Appreciate everyone for joining us. Appreciate you as always, Rachel. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.